So you're with us on the Made It in Music podcast. We're here in the studio with Jason B. Jones and Josh Wurzelbacher, both creative directors at Integrity and at Centricity Music. We're going to be diving into their stories today. Thank you guys so much for being with us on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. We're stoked.
Let's talk about, first of all, even before we dive in, just give us maybe from each of your perspectives, before we dive into your stories, what is a creative director in the first place?
I made a joke earlier that I think that it's janitorial services, but I mean, I would say I think it really. I feel like we have to be the advocates for visual language at a record label. All of the profit and loss around in the music industry is all about the written word and songs. And there's a very important caveat to all that, which is making sure that there's a visual cohesion to the story that we're trying to tell. And so as a creative director, my job is to be sort of the third leg on the stool, really partnering with A&R and marketing to make sure that there's a compelling visual story that coincides with the sonic story and product that they're trying to create.
Yeah, and to make sure that visually it makes sense with who that artist is, to really tell their story as an artist, to make sure that what you're seeing makes sense with what you're hearing, that all that is cohesive together. Because you could have a cohesive visual brand, but if it doesn't look like what it sounds like, or if it's not authentic to who that artist is, it's a failure.
Yeah. And authenticity is so important now. I think even more so than ever before, because there's just this white noise of content that's coming out all the time, that I would say that especially the Christian consumer is really looking for something that they can connect with emotionally. And if it's not authentic, they can smell that a mile away. And so our job is to really extract, when we're working with an artist, who are you and what are you trying to tell people that is unique to what God has placed in your heart, in your life.
Yeah. That's so good. I want to put a bookmark there and come back to that, because that authenticity conversation is so important, with whether you're a Christian artist or rock and roll.
Yeah, for sure.
Man. Yeah. Let's talk about, first of all, just each of your stories, maybe just a couple minutes on how did you get into music? How did you get to where you're at now? What does that journey kind of looked like?
You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I got into music as a fan early. I grew up, my dad listened to soul, so there was a lot of Temptations and Four Tops and James Brown and that kind of stuff. My mom was more into 50s and 60s rock and roll, so
good musical upbringing there.
Yeah, it was great. So there was a lot of that kind of influence. And then as I got into middle school and high school and discovered punk rock and hardcore and that kind of stuff, I kind of found my world. And so that was just always a thing that I really connected with, was that community, especially as I got into punk rock and finding community in that music was just really important to who I was and what I was experiencing. And so it's always been kind of a part of my personal ethos.
Yeah.
And so started bands in college and high school and stuff, and was on that side of music for a long time. Took a while before I went and really started doing art, but I was working at a university in their marketing department as a designer, and through a mutual friend, when Jason was at Capitol, they were looking for a new designer, and we got connected, and it worked out. So it was kind of, I wasn't really looking to get into doing creative in music. Otherwise, I mean, I was making gig posters and stuff for friends' bands and that kind of stuff. But as far as like doing it like career-wise, I hadn't even thought that was really an option. And then, you call it divine intervention or whatever, that opportunity came up, and I jumped, and it was a good fit. And I guess the rest is history.
Yeah. And you're currently at Centricity Music.
Currently at Centricity Music. I spent about a little over 3 years with Capitol Records, learned a ton, had a great time, love a lot of the people there, and had an opportunity to move over to Centricity as creative director. Been there about a year and a half, and absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
fantastic.
Well, it's great crew. You're in good company there. So
Yeah, Chad Segura, who's been mentioned on your podcast, I believe.
well, he's been on the
many
podcast.
times. I had to at least put his name out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an incredible crew of people that just really want to serve, and yeah, it's great.
That's awesome. Jason?
Yeah, so my musical upbringing was I was a church youth group praise band choir kid. I was in church since I was 5 and grew up in really great youth groups that had bands, and then the youth group also had a youth choir, and so I found out early on that I had an affinity or an enjoyment of singing and participating in those, and so much so, and I don't share this very often, that I was in a scholarship singing group in college.
Wow.
Let me paint the picture for you. This is the type of
I'm
singing
picturing
group.
robes.
Oh,
the choir robes?
no, better. This is like 4 girls, 4 guys, all the same suit but different colors, like stepping forward and singing to Avalon tracks.
Oh man.
And
man.
we would. I went to Houston Baptist University, and we went around, and we were sort of a recruitment tool. And I am so immensely thankful that all of this happened before YouTube. I'm a little older,
Yep.
but if YouTube had existed, I'm not sure I would have any
Did it have a
credibility
really
at all.
great name, like the Sword Bearers?
what
No,
was
but
the
that's
name?
better.
What was the
No,
name?
it was Focus.
It was a little more progressive.
And we
yeah.
we had
I
a
guess
si-
Sword Bearers is a little Southern Baptist.
we had well, this was a Southern Baptist school. Maybe they're just trying to be hip.
Bit
I don't know.
hip.
Was it like
Yeah.
an acronym?
Oh, maybe, but I don't remember. But I had this is terrible. I can't believe I'm admitting this. But in one of the songs, I had a rap.
Yeah, you did.
And maybe in some bonus content I can.
Do you
the
remember
rap,
the rap?
Yeah, I know. I remember the rap.
Well, you're setting yourself up now.
Yeah.
Okay, gosh, that can't.
You got to do. You can't just like.
All right.
You realize this
I don't know
going
if this
on
is
the
copy.
internet.
I know. It was from the G to the R to the E to the AT. You probably know, but you still got a big need for the one. Call the sun. Here we go. Said and done. Drop a little reminder that God is not the only one, or is still the only one.
Toby Mac who?
No, it wasn't
Exactly.
Toby. I don't even know. That was terrible. Anyway,
That's amazing.
so
your success there
yeah,
as a
yeah.
rap artist.
Yeah. Thank you. I can't believe
Opened
I just
many
did
doors.
That. That's going to be on the internet. That's right.
It's going to be on the internet.
And I'm going to have like people that I went to college like trolling now. Yeah.
Incredible.
You asked for it.
I know. You even warned me.
Yeah.
Anyway, out of that, after college, I helped to found and I owned a company called Otterball, which was a marketing website that built websites and different sort of creative assets for artists. And the whole thing was I loved music so much, but the idea of being an artist just wasn't my gifting. I mean, my dad was is a painter and a fine artist, and so I kind of had that in my DNA, and I loved it. And this was a way to really marry the two, like to work with musicians and also be super creative. And so we ran that started in 2005, and I had a chance to work on some projects for Capitol. I think the one that I remember specifically is I did some stuff for Josh Wilson at the time, and Brad O'Donnell's a dear friend of mine. He's the now co-president over at Capitol CMG, and when they had an opening for I think it was a creative marketing director position, he brought me in, and it was a dream job. I mean, I was working on things that I would have never imagined working on, and then from that I went over to Integrity Music, where I'm the director of marketing and creative services, and where we're really focusing on worship and worship expression in music, which is just. I pinch myself because like you're sitting there worshiping and deep diving in your faith, and that's your job to really try to figure out how to come alongside someone whose entire mission is just to create songs that are vertical in nature. It's just really cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the importance of creative. I know that you've shared that it's the whole paradox of, do people actually buy a book based on the cover or based on the author? Maybe you can share a little bit with our audience on that, just the importance of the visual aspect and how you guys think about it in your respective roles.
Yeah, I think it's obviously super important because there's a lot of noise. I forget how many songs are added to Spotify every day. It's some ridiculous number. And we're trying to cut through all that noise with something. And you can get playlisting and you can get all of the kind of marketing things to help on that side, but it still has to look good. And I think a big part of that is making sure that it looks good all the way down. So, you've kind of got this funnel from discovery to fandom, and you want people to take that journey from first hearing you on a playlist to, ideally purchasing a record or coming to see you live. And getting them to come down that funnel, I think, includes having a really strong, authentic visual brand that is consistent and helps the listener have a visual connection with that music that tells another part of the story. And I think it's just as important now as ever. We're not fighting necessarily for shelf space, but we're trying to go a step further, and we're trying to create fans and engage in a way that things become shareable, that they become part of the conversation, and having a firm understanding of the visuals is really, I think, imperative to that.
Yeah.
And when I started, and you as well, we would engage with an artist once every 2 years for a 2 or 3 month stint, because the release cycle was so, an artist would make a record and then they wouldn't really make another one until 2 years later. So we had this, like, we're best friends for 3 months where we have to get a bunch of stuff done, and then you move on to the next artist. I would say that the biggest difference in creative now versus when I started is with the, with a single base culture where it's about adding singles every 30 to 90 days in order to be able to keep your listener really engaged with who you are. We're having to work with the artist continuously to try and figure out, how do we get more content? Because the beast out there, the consumer, wants content. As soon as you give it to them, they're ready for something else. So there was this moment where it was like, okay, cool. Here's our entire campaign. Here's a beautiful cover. Here's a beautiful music video. And that's really all you needed in order to be able to really launch an artist. Now it's micro content. You need a fire hose of content in order to really bring in a new audience, especially for a new artist. A new artist has an uphill battle. And I would say that the best artists that I work with are people who already understand that they need to continually create content. And our job is just to level it up. Like, how do we really make it better? How do we take a little bit of the pressure off of the artist by helping them build process around making all of that content and then keeping a vision across the whole campaign?
Yeah, that's daunting. And I want to come back to the shareability discussion because you touched on it. So we'll actually do a deep dive after the interview on how do you even, it's not only making content, but you got to make good content that's actually makes people want to click share on it. And that's how things go viral. So we will do a deep dive on that. People can check that out at the madeitinmusic.com show notes for this episode if they're interested. But let's talk a little bit about that fire hose. Like, how have you guys had to adapt in your roles? Does it just require more manpower? Does it require better systems? How do you handle that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of other people listening to this thinking, okay, well, I don't have a creative director. How in the world, as a new artist, do I keep up with that?
I think one of the things that I've noticed is that it's more important now than ever to have an authentic voice of the artist. Because it used to be like you could have a great photo shoot and you could shoot a music video and you'd have a great cover and you'd launch that out into the marketplace and it would live for 2 years and that was kind of it. And so if it wasn't really who the artist was, it was okay because it was a marketing thing and people still bought the record. Where now it's every day my artist is posting on Instagram. And if it's not real to who he or she is and what they're doing and what their mission is and what they're creating, that's easily, somebody's going to see through that. They're going to see through the marketing. They're going to see through the photo shoot that wasn't who that person really is. They're going to see through that music video that didn't quite capture who that person is, because they're seeing content, ideally, more often and getting a better picture of who that artist really is. So I think a key to that is really genuinely finding out who that artist is as a human being, what they do naturally, kind of what the expression of their music is in their daily life, is really important to that, because we can't just create stuff for them to post every day, make a new well-produced 30-second clip for them to put on Instagram every day or whatever it is. They've got to take some ownership of it. And I think making sure that all of that matches who that person is really vital to that, so that they can own it and run with it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because if you ask an artist like, hey, I need you, what's really popular right now is vlogging. Hey, artist who doesn't do that at all, I need you to start a daily vlog. Like, you're going to have an uphill battle and you will never get that authentic expression from that artist. So I feel like what we do as creative directors is you have to identify, one, what makes that artist special, like what is their unique voice, and two, what is an easy overflow of what they naturally want to do, and how do we make that better? So, like I'm thinking about some of our artists who are already, pretty active on socials. What we just need to do is to tweak and refine. I don't want to say, hey, let's add something to what you're doing that is unnatural, because I know that it just is not going to be successful. And the artist is then going to resent the platform or the process. So we really have to do our best to figure out how to just naturally amplify what they're already doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like making the best version of who they already are.
Yeah. So how do you, and I'm sure it's different with every artist, but how do you help your artists make it a manageable task? Like, if you're just literally asking, like you said, the vlog example, if an artist has zero experience putting out vlogs or really doing any video, is that going to be something that you're just going to avoid altogether with them? Or is that like, okay, we need to hire a video person to follow them around 24/7 or whatever? How do you guys systematize that for your artists so it's actually doable and they can still focus on really what their special sauce is, which is making great music?
For me, and I don't know if this resonates with you, Joshua, is that for me, it's a lot about resource management. So it's like trying to figure out how much do we have from just a real world resources. What is the money that we have from a creative perspective to be able to invest in this artist in order to be able to get the most content possible? And then what can we add to what they're already doing? And then what do we need to completely supplement? So, to your point, some artists might not know at all how to do video. Well, immediately, I'm not going to try to get them to do that. I'm going to bring someone alongside of them. Maybe it's going out on tour with the artist to capture B-roll. Maybe it's an editor. This is something we've been doing more lately is, the artist is great about capturing stuff on their phone and doing vlog style videos, but they have hard drives of this and they have no time or really affinity to edit it. So then it's bringing an editor alongside them, investing in that to then take all of that and create it into content. So like for the independent artists, I think that it's really figuring out who can you collaborate with that is already good at the things that you want to pursue. Like find someone who's a good vlogger and then try to figure out how to partner with them, because it benefits that vlogger as well to have someone who's also good at music. There's a lot of ways from an independent perspective to find people who are naturally good at other things and really create this sort of A-team of people that are all trying to work together.
I love that, because that's something that doesn't cost anything. I think a lot of people, you talked about resources really for most people when they're starting out, what the resource that they have is time, and they have a limited amount of it. Some have access to some money, some finite money, but those strategic alliances, let's call them, what can a musician bring to somebody like a blogger or a vlogger, who, like, how would that conversation look?
Yeah, so I think that a musician inherently is going to be a good audio editor. I mean, sometimes they're at least going to be a little bit more familiar with, sonically making something that sounds appealing, whereas a video person's going to make something from a video perspective that's going to make it appealing via video. So that seems like a really natural marriage to me, to be able to help each other make a better product. So, I know that a lot of times vloggers are looking for, unique audio or music to be able to put in their vlogs. Well, you work with a musician that you can craft some of those things together. I think that also comes with working with visual artists, like graphic designers. Like a graphic designer will oftentimes need some of those things as well to be able to use for their promotion and their marketing. So when I was starting out with Otterball, that was the thing that we learned how to do really well, is how do we barter services and just build great relationships. And that has then carried over in how strategically I can work on label projects who might be under-resourced because it's just an artist starting out. We don't have a lot of marketing budget. So how do we figure out how to build a team and still have a very high-quality product with a modest budget?
Yeah. That's good.
I think, kind of backing up to the beginning of that conversation too, one of the things that we've noticed and that our team has started implementing is helping artists figure out kind of what their mission statement is. Mm-hmm. And if you can help an artist, at least from our perspective, understand how vlogging, for example, fits into that mission statement, even if they haven't done it before, all of a sudden they go, oh, okay, I get it. I see why this is important. Let me give it a try. And so helping introduce them to new things, understanding how this benefits their mission, will quickly help them kind of get on board and even want to do it, and be excited about it. So I think that's as much of the conversation of like the nuts and bolts of how we're going to do this, of getting the right people in the room to make things happen, is also helping each other understand, okay, why are we doing it? Why is this important to, why are we making a vlog about what outfit you're wearing when you're trying to sell records? Yeah. Like, how does this benefit each other? And so helping understand that why behind the how for an artist, I think is important.
Can you
too.
Expand on that too? Because I think a lot of artists think, well, I can't remember, one of you guys said like an artist is just really good at doing music, and like, I don't know how to do any of this other stuff. How does that conversation go with somebody that's like, okay, no, that people actually do want to see your, in some cases, how do you do your makeup for your shows, or how do you pick out your outfits, or maybe you have a little cooking thing that like maybe has nothing to do with music. Mm-hmm. Like, is that at all a part of the conversation?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's because we're all human. And because of the internet, and we kind of get this peek behind the curtain at each other's lives, we're showing, oftentimes a very manicured version of that peak, but we do show behind the scenes. And so we're so used to seeing that in people's lives online that we get excited that like, oh, look, this musical artist that I'm into also likes to make Thai food. That's interesting. And it fills out that person as a whole. So it takes them from being, oh yeah, that guy does that one song that I like, to, oh, this is a person that I'm getting to know and understand. So it's kind of a more holistic view of promotion of you as a human being. And the music is part of that. That's what you're passionate about. That's where you make your money. That's what you want to do. But you still are the culmination of all these other things. And that's what people want to know, is like who you are. So it kind of goes back to that authenticity thing, and like, what are you passionate about? What are you excited about? And for us, like that's the conversation we have up front with an artist when the whole process begins, of before we ever set up a photo shoot, before we ever design an album cover. It comes down to like having a conversation with that artist. What are they into? What are they drawn to? What are they excited about besides just their music? Like what's your favorite sports team? What's your favorite shoe brand? When you go out to eat, where do you like to go? All of those things are key into who that person is, that we can find ways to kind of work into that bigger brand and explain that to a consumer.
And that has evolved. So I would say that is an enlightened position that is fairly new, I would say, in our careers, because what we spent a lot of time doing just even a few years ago was making story behind the song videos that play out a little bit like this. It's two guys sitting on stools that say, yeah, we had this scheduled co-write and we thought, how can we write this really great song? And, I pulled up in my Range Rover and this other guy pulled up in his Porsche and we said, what does God really want to hear out of his people? And we figured out how to make the next hit. And it wasn't relatable or authentic at all. I mean, it was factual, it was actually what happened, but it didn't really speak to who those people are or why that song is important to people in churches who are going through, trials and broken homes and broken marriages and illness. And when they see two people that live in big houses writing songs about God, we did a lot of those videos, and we're beginning to realize, or I think we've all realized, that what people really need is emotional connections to other humans, and they don't need to necessarily see how this art was manufactured, if that makes sense.
So it sounds like storytelling is a pretty big key element of what you guys do as creative directors.
Yeah, it's visually storytelling, and it's making sure that the album cover looks like the promo shots, looks like the Instagram, looks like the music video, so that you're getting a cohesive story. And each of those things, even the things like the cooking vlogs or whatever, they tell a part of that story.
Yeah.
And it's a part of the bigger brand of who the artist is as a human being.
So whose job is it to come up with let's call it the vision, the visual vision, and that story that they want to tell? Is it a creative director or is it the artist?
I would say that every artist that we work with comes in from a different place. I can remember artists that I worked with, like you mentioned, that's like, I'm really good at music and that's what I do, but I have no idea really visually what I want. I mean, and we'll start to ask those questions. I come in always assuming that they have some vision, and sometimes you'll say like, so what do you really think? What are you thinking about from like a look and feel perspective? And they go, well, here, let me roll out this scroll of all the notes I've taken. You're like, okay, cool, good. We can work with that. And then there are many that are like, I have no idea. What do you think? And everyone is different. Every artist, sometimes they come to the table needing you to do everything. In the case of a lot of Integrity's artists that are tied in with a large church, they have an entire creative department whose horsepower really is a factor in creating all of those assets. So everyone is a bit different, and what we're trying to do is really find the gold in all of those things and really pull out how do we really pull all of those things together in order to be able to come up with that strategy. But that looks really different artist to artist.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is when an artist comes in and they're like, I know exactly what I want. And here's what it is. And I'm making this smart pop record. It's going to be fantastic. And the cover is going to have, this death metal look to it. And, I want all black everything. And there's going to be snakes and blood. And you're like, cool. Let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. And you kind of work through, some of those ideas. Those are always such fun conversations.
I want it to be really clean, but also kind of gritty and organic. And you're like, those are like opposite words, right? Those mean quite literally.
I don't think those words mean what you think they mean.
They don't mean what you think they mean. Yes.
Yeah. So there is totally an element often, I shouldn't say often, but many times of having to help craft and hone what they think they mean down to what they do really mean.
Yeah. So I want to peek into the actual nuts and bolts of the process. Like if I'm an artist that comes to you, I'm middle of the road. I have a decent idea of what I think I want things to look like, but I don't necessarily know what the steps are. What does it look like? Like, what does that meeting look like? Have you guys prepared some ideas? Has the artist brought some ideas to the table? Like, walk us through maybe the steps in the process.
Yeah. Our process starts with getting to know the artist. So oftentimes it'll be coffee or a meal and just purely hanging out. We're not going to talk about creative. I just want to get to know you. And so we'll do that. And then I have a creative questionnaire that's probably 25 questions that I'll email them. And if they have a manager, copy the manager on it. And it's everything from what's your favorite shoe brand to if you were a color, what color would it be? Like just seemingly random questions that kind of help us get to know more about them and what they're into. And I will often ask them then to put together a Pinterest board of things that you like. You don't have to tell me why you like them. It doesn't have to be another artist that you like. Like it could be a logo that you thought was cool, a birthday invitation that you got in the mail that you just really like the color of, or a photograph from when you were at the beach and you just really love the way it makes you feel. I want you to collect all those things so we can take a look at it. And then we'll kind of talk through that and take a look at it and kind of get their feedback on why they put these things together. And then I have a creative manager that works with me, and between the two of us, we'll kind of distill down all of that information into a couple solid ideas of where we think the artist is going, what they're into, kind of what really encapsulates what's happening in their mind. We put together a creative document that kind of says, all right, here's some other pictures, some photographs from a studio or from out in the wild that we think really kind of are what you're getting at. Here's some colors, here are some fonts. And we put all that together, share that with the artist, and they go, yeah, this is totally me. I feel this. This is right. Or they'll go, this I don't like this picture. Can we take this one off there? Can we add this one on that I found? And you kind of have this back and forth conversation, honing that down to something that everybody goes, yeah, this is where we're headed. And then we take that and then we start making decisions based off that solid kind of document that says, this is visually what we're trying to accomplish. And then we start talking to photographers and video directors and, graphic designers if we need somebody to create something, or illustrators. And you then start to put all of the people together that it's going to take to accomplish that document. And then that gives us something that everybody's on the same page. And we can always go back to that and say, is this choice we're making, does that decision line up with who the artist is, with what we talked about?
Yeah.
So it gives us all a good jumping off point.
So, well, go ahead if you're going to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, our process is similar. He has some tools that we don't, and we do things like we have a formalized sort of hang that there's a lot of different people involved, but all of it is pretty much the same. I would say the only addition to that, and I'm sure you do the same thing, is it's super important to me to engage with A&R as early in the process as possible, because I need to know what themes are coming out of the writing process. Because a lot of times there's something's moving. There's a spiritual nature to what in our industry God is telling that artist that he might not even know yet as he's writing with co-writes, as he's in the studio recording. So anytime I can hear roughs, or I can even go to the studio and feel like what are those themes that are emerging, it also helps me build relationship with the artist when I get engaged. So when I come to the artist and say, hey, I've listened to what you're writing, I've listened to your songs, I've been in the studio, tell me if I'm wrong, but I really feel like this story of redemption is what is coming out of what you're trying to say. And connecting on a heart level makes all of the education around visuals so much easier, because there's immediate trust. It's not just that, we can make a packaging that is, market viable in the market, or we can make a killer music video. Is, do you really understand that artist and what they're trying to say? And so, yes, all of what Joshua was talking about, we do all that, but it's so important. I know it's important for him as well to make sure that we know who they are before we start any of that.
That's good. So let's say I'm a up and coming musician that comes to you guys and I want to up my creative game. What are some of the key skills that I need to be developing?
Key skills. I mean, I think a spirit of collaboration to begin with is a big thing. To be able to say, I want to work with people. We want to work together. We have the same goal in mind. And to be, as artists, because we're visual artists and you as a musical artist, there's still creativity is a common language between us. And so if we can get on the same page emotionally and kind of talk about those things and establish trust and a willingness to work together, I think is really a big part of that. And maybe taking some time to figure out what it is that you really like.
Yeah.
What you're really into. That's super helpful.
Yeah.
For me, I want to know that the artist is working as hard or harder than we are. I think it's challenging when you have an artist who really just want you to make everything, and they sit back and evaluate. It's fun, and I feel like productive when that artist is hustling and working as hard as you are, because it's all about that spirit of collaboration. I think that artists oftentimes they're really confident in their musical abilities because that's, obviously they're working with us because they're great musicians. They need to have that level of abandon with visual and video and all of that. Don't be afraid, because I think that in the world that we live in now, you can afford to be more raw and authentic than you've ever have before, and that's actually respected. So just get out there and create and build your community. We can help hone, but if you have just the ethos to go in there and just make and make and make, that's gonna be a recipe for success.
Yeah, and in the beginning, a lot of it's DIY. So should they learn like Photoshop? Should they learn video? Should they not worry so much about that kind of stuff?
I mean, I think that's one of those things that you use your community. Mm-hmm. So you find somebody in your church or at school that does or has dabbled in graphic design, and you start to build and define those people that you want to work with. And that's when it's most successful, is when, you write songs really well. So you write songs really well and you find somebody to help you with your visuals. Cause nobody's going to be aces at everything.
Yeah.
And so if your passion is songwriting, stick with songwriting and find the people, surround yourself with other creatives that can really help you with the rest of that, and trust them.
Yeah. Just
like you would, if you're creating something for they ask you to, hey, could you write a theme song for my podcast? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want them to trust you that, hey, you've asked me to do this because you see something in me that, we want to work on this together. It kind of goes the other way too. It's like, let's have some trust. Let's build some trust with each other and work this through, because we both want success at the end. And I think on our end, so anybody that's looking to get into the creative side, a big part of that is trusting your artist and being willing to, I think you kind of said this at the top, is like, it's not about me and my visual art and what I'm going to create. I'm going to make a name for myself in making album covers. It's about the artist and creating what's real to them, and, propping up. People are buying this for the music. They're not buying it because my album cover was so cool. And it just really needs to support the music.
And to be super cliche, like, no one climbs a mountain alone. Like, you have to have Sherpas and mentors around you. We have it. I mean, I have music video directors who I don't have business talking to. They're so talented, yet, I could call them right now and they would give me advice. I think that the creative community, especially in the music industry and even closer to home in Nashville, is everyone is so willing to share. There's not a lot of competition because we're all trying to really make something that is meaningful. And in the Christian community, we all know that all of this serves a higher purpose. Like, it's all to point people to Jesus, everything that we do. And so I think that there's a lot of openness to share. There's not a lot of people holding much close to their vest anymore, because we're in this open source culture where everybody is willing to really help with whatever you need. It just has to make sense, building that community.
And I even love just this right here. Like, you're two separate creative directors at two separate labels, sort of talking shop, and you guys have clearly a great relationship with each other, where it's much more about collaboration than it is about competition. So that's really, really cool to see, and is not that way with all parts of the industry.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've had the opportunity to work together. We're good friends, and I feel like we both really want each other to succeed.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that more people are like that than we think. I think that if people aren't that way, it's all fear-based.
Yeah.
It's competition. I found in our industry is all people that are just scared that they're not going to have a job anymore. And that's just not an area. I'm old enough now to know that I want to work with people that I care about, and it doesn't really matter the companies that we're a part of.
Sure.
I just want to be around good people.
Yeah. And I would say both of our labels are kind of built from this idea of artists first, which is not necessarily typical of the industry, but both of us, like, that's our labels are built as cheerleaders for our artists. And so that kind of comes from the top down. And for us to we're encouraged to reach out to each other and to work with other people in the industry. And, we are kind of all in this together, trying to make great art for great people. And I think that comes from just kind of the backgrounds of our labels and kind of what their missions are, really.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, are you guys ready to jump into my favorite part of the show, the lightning round?
Yeah.
Lightning round.
Number 1, favorite Nashville meeting spot.
Oh gosh. Dead air. I meet the Starbucks down the road. I don't know. That's where I seem to always meet. I don't know if it's my favorite. That's just where I meet.
My favorite is West Nashville Frothy Monkey.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Love
right down
that
the street
one.
for me. I love that place. Yeah.
All right. Good.
That's a much better answer.
Yeah.
We should just both answer these questions.
Sure.
Okay. And
it's a team effort.
We'll see whose answer's better.
Yeah.
Exactly. There you go. Number 2, most awkward creative meeting moment. You don't have to name names.
I know yours.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm blanking.
Remix.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, I don't know how to answer that question. I feel like, do we say no comment?
This isn't necessarily a creative meeting, but creative process.
Okay.
Can I answer it that way?
Yeah.
I was doing a record for an artist who came and sat in my office and watched every single move that I made in creating this packaging. And it was like, oh, can you move that a little bit to the left? And then I would have to print it out and cut it out and put it in a CD case so this artist could see what it looked like when I moved it like 6 pixels to the left or whatever. Or change the color. Can you make it a little more purple instead of a little more blue? And now let's print it out and see what that looks like for like 12 hours.
So that's mine as well, because I called him after I had been home. I called him and he was talking in code because the artist was right there. And I'm like, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And I literally like went up there and had to like, so how are we doing? Oh, I think this looks great. Are we ready to wrap? Like I tried to move it along.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah.
And that was like super early in my career too. So I wasn't like comfortable enough to be like, all right, we're done. Like we got to cut it out.
Yeah, that would not happen today.
It was wild.
That's awesome. You're probably both going to have separate answers on this, unless you're not. Favorite album packaging of all time?
Ooh.
Of all time.
And oh gosh, I'm so conscious of dead air. I don't know.
Like that we've worked on, or
just period. It could be if you genuinely think something you've worked on is the best of all time.
Oh gosh.
Oh no, that's definitely not.
Yeah.
Not the case.
Okay. This is a nostalgic moment. So when I was growing up, my dad had an LP collection that I would look through all the time. And I think that's where I really found my love for album covers. And he had and I hope I get this right, I think it was a Uriah Heep record that was designed, that the art was H.R. Geiger, who it was like the guy that did Alien movies. And it was like this multi-fold, like like part of the cover was revealed when you pulled it back, and it was so great. And I hope that's the right album, but it was a H.R. Geiger cover LP. I think it was your
Good, good answer.
Yeah, that's still a better answer than I have. There's so many packages that I love and respect. It's hard to like pick a total favorite. Can I say album cover?
Yeah.
Does that
sure.
work?
Yeah,
Instead
yeah.
of packaging? It might be again a cliche kind of answer, but the Velvet Underground cover that was done by Warhol with the
come
banana on it.
Yeah.
Like it's so iconic that people that have never heard Velvet Underground, people that have never like even listened to rock music, like they've seen that banana. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that is, like that's a thing. And
Yeah.
if you can create that kind of, or even like the Nirvana cover with the baby on it, like I aspire to one day make any single cover that people see it and they're like, oh yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Like they know what it is.
Yeah.
Man.
I think, and that's that cool thing about collaborating with like fine artists, you know, like in both of our instances, it was people that were successful in art that were partnering with music. And I think there's something really cool there.
Yeah. First concert.
Oh gosh, this is embarrassing.
Do it.
What is it?
I was, I think 10 or 11 years old, and it was a birthday party. This was like a girl in my class whose parents like bought a bunch of tickets for everyone, and it was New Kids on the Block.
Yeah. That's
There you
a
go.
better answer than mine.
What's yours?
I think my first concert was the Newsboys.
Which tour?
It would have been like Going Public,
Okay.
I think.
Like Shine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was like, as far as like first concert that I went to on my own that I bought tickets to kind of thing.
Yeah.
I remember my parents dropping me and my friend Justin off. Yeah. I think
blew
that
your
was the
mind.
first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
With
That's
the
awesome.
drum kit that would spin.
The riser.
I call
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Wild.
And lastly, favorite creative design tool.
Oh gosh.
Man, I love Photoshop. I could spend all day and like the art that I make personally for just my own thing. I do all in Photoshop. It's manipulating photos and I kind of do like surrealist stuff that Photoshop is just key to. I could spend all day in Photoshop.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And you never are. You're never great at it. Like I know some people that are great at it, but like I am always learning something new. And you think that doing this as long as you can always be taught some new way to do something in Photoshop. I would say that mine's like really my tablet. Like I have a Wacom. Is it Wacom or Wacom or
Walk 'em.
Wacom? Let's go with Wacom.
What do you do with a dog? You walk 'em.
Ah, did they? Is that really it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you do with a dog? You walk them.
That's awesome.
My Wacom tablet. I like it because there's I started off as like a hand illustrator, and I don't get to do much of that anymore. So, like even retouching photos using a tablet adds this sort of tactile nature to what I'm doing. So I think it's fun.
Yeah. That thing changed my workflow completely.
Yeah.
When I started using a tablet for everything. I don't even have a mouse anymore. I use that tablet for
Wow.
It also makes you look like you know what you're doing.
yeah.
Like even if you
People
don't.
walk over and they're like, "Oh, he has a tablet. He must be
Wow.
creative."
Yeah.
I
What are
should
you
probably,
making?
I should probably get one for my songwriting sessions.
Yeah, there you
Will
go.
that make me look smarter?
Yeah.
I'll just be
No, it's like
drawing
for you
something.
guys, it's like your volume knob. It looks like really rad, and you just kind of fiddle with it. It makes you look like you totally know what you're doing. When I took an audio engineering class in college, and I realized that like all mixing boards, it's just like if you learn one channel,
knob,
you know
yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
But you could sit at consoles with like 100 channels and just look like the man, and literally like it's you're playing with two knobs the whole time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sort of like design.
So, closing out, how can people interact with you guys? Social media, emails, if you feel like giving that. How can people find you? Find your work online? Website?
Instagram is probably the best for me.
Yeah.
WRZL.jpg is my .jpg is
Okay.
my handle.
Yeah. I'll give out my email address. I ain't scared.
There you go.
Mine is jason.jones@integritymusic.com.
Okay.
And yeah, I would say that I love like engaging with people that I feel like I'm at a point in my career that I'm just trying to pay forward all the things that I've done wrong. You know, because I feel like I've done a lot more wrong than I've done right. And I think that if I can share that with anybody, I'm happy to.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, we're going to be doing a deep dive on creating content that is truly shareable right after this. And people can find that out at madeitinmusic.com. They can go to the show notes page and they can check that out. But Jason, Josh, thank you so much for being with us on the Made It Music podcast.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, man. This is great.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for hanging out on this YouTube video with us. In case you didn't know, this is from the Made It Music Podcast Season 2. We have a ton of awesome guests that come on the show, all music business professionals, to share their knowledge and experience with you. So if you want to subscribe to not miss any future episodes, hit that subscribe button on YouTube and you'll be notified about all of them. And in case you didn't know, we do a deep dive for every episode where we go really in depth on a certain topic from each podcast episode. So sign up right here to get free unlimited access to all of those deep dives from our podcast. And if you want to watch another Made It in Music podcast video, click here.